There were worms with spikes that walked on their backs, elephants with shovel-shaped jaws, and dinosaurs with vampire fangs. The ancient world was full of strange animals that look fake even now. These weren't weird animals living in lost parts of evolution. They were real species that lived in seas, forests, and the sky in the past, with body plans that looked like bugs in nature's system. But each one had a plan, a goal, and a story that is so strange that it makes us question everything we think we know about life on Earth. If you've ever thought about how evolution could make designs this crazy, get ready for an even stranger story. Hallucigenia, the walking nightmare worm. The Hallucigenia looks like a paleontologist's joke. It's a tiny worm with long spines on its back and legs that look like noodles on its bottom. Its head is so confusing that scientists spent 40 years putting it on the wrong end. Even though we have better fossils and better pictures now, it still looks like something from an artist's drawing and not Earth's Cambrian seas. But Hallucigenia was a real thing. And it shows how early evolution worked when there were no rules, no plans, and no concern about looking silly. The first fossils were discovered in Canada's Burgess Shale in the early 1900s, but they weren't described until the 1970s, and that's when the chaos began. The original reconstruction showed Hallucigenia upside down, walking on what were actually its back spines, with its soft legs sticking upward like feelers. It looked like a creature trying to balance on stilts while waving spaghetti in the air. To the scientists at the time, this made sense because early Cambrian creatures were famously weird and poorly preserved, but the idea created decades of confusion and inspired the name Hallucigenia because it looked like a biological hallucination. It wasn't until the 1990s that researchers realized the fossil had been flipped. The soft, flexible tentacle-like arms were legs with claws, and the rigid spikes were defensive structures. This corrected view made Hallucigenia slightly more normal, but only slightly. Even right side up, it still looked like nothing alive today, a spiny, soft-bodied worm walking on pointed stilts. Then another twist came in 2015, when high-resolution imaging revealed tiny circular eyes on one end, confirming the true head at last. Before that, the head was thought to be the rounded tail, which had no facial features at all. Hallucigenia belonged to a group called Lobopodians, early worm-like relatives of arthropods. These creatures had soft bodies, stubby legs, and often bizarre external armor. Hallucigenia's long spines likely protected it from early predators like Anomalocaris, which used grasping arms to capture prey. The spines acted like a biological keep-out sign, a mouthful of needles for anything trying to bite it. This defense strategy worked well enough for Lobopodians to survive for millions of years, though almost all eventually went extinct as arthropods evolved harder shells and more complex bodies. Hallucigenia's legs might be the most peculiar part of its body. At the end of each leg was a tiny hand that was made up of two parts, kind of like tiny tongs. Hallucigenia was probably a gentle feeder that scraped bacteria or organic film from the bottom with these claws instead of grabbing their prey. But the claws helped keep its soft body in place as it walked on rough ground. Fossils show that Hallucigenia's legs were not all the same length from front to back. This made it walk slowly and rock back and forth. Think of a walking toothbrush with spikes on top. It would be strange, but it would work. Recent discoveries in China reveal close relatives of Hallucigenia with more detailed heads and better preserved soft tissue. These fossils show that Hallucigenia likely had simple sensory organs and a tubular mouth lined with teeth-like structures. Inside the throat were even more tiny teeth, forming a conveyor belt system that helped pull food inward. That strange throat full of teeth links Hallucigenia to early velvet worms, onychophorans, soft-bodied animals that still live today in tropical forests. Velvet worms use sticky glue to trap prey, but their internal mouth structure resembles that of Hallucigenia, hinting at ancient origins. What makes Hallucigenia look so fake isn't just its shape. It's the combination of features that shouldn't go together. Soft legs paired with sharp spines, a simple worm body paired with claws, a tiny head paired with a spiny armored back. It's the biological equivalent of a sketch with too many ideas, all thrown onto one creature. But during the Cambrian explosion, evolution was experimenting rapidly. Hallucigenia survives in the fossil record, not because it was typical, but because it was extreme. Opabinia, the five-eyed vacuum cleaner. Opabinia is an ancient animal that looks like it belongs in a video game or an alien cartoon. It has a soft body, 5 eyes spread out across its head, a long flexible trunk that ends in a claw, and a mouth tucked under its face, which is not where you'd expect it to be. It was shown to scientists for the first time in the 1970s, and they laughed because they thought it was funny. But Opabinia was real, and it shows one of the first times evolution tried to make a complicated killer. Opabinia lived around 505 million years ago during the Cambrian period, a time when life on Earth was exploding into new forms. Most animals were small, soft and strange, and Opabinia was no exception. Its 5 eyes immediately stand out, not just because there are so many of them, but because they were raised on little stalks. These stalks let the animal scan its surroundings in almost every direction, a huge advantage in the crowded Cambrian seas. Some scientists think the eyes could detect motion and light changes far better than most early animals, helping Opabinia avoid predators while searching for food. Its most famous feature, however, is the long trunk that extends from the front of its head. This trunk, or proboscis, ended in a claw-like structure that could grab prey or sweep food toward its mouth. The mouth itself faced backward, underneath the body, which seems impractical to modern eyes but worked well for a benthic, seafloor lifestyle. Opabinia probably used its trunk to reach into burrows, pull out soft-bodied worms, and pass them back toward its hidden mouth. This feeding method had almost no modern equivalent, which is part of why the creature looks so fake. The body of Opabinia was also unusual. It had flaps along its sides, which it waved in sequence to swim, similar to how cuttlefish move today. Along its back ran a flexible fin or ridge that helped stabilize it in the water. This combination of flapping and fin control gave Opabinia better maneuverability than many of its contemporaries. Soft-bodied animals often struggled against strong currents, but Opabinia's engineering allowed it to dart and wriggle with surprising precision. One noteworthy question about Opabinia is where it fits in the tree of life. Scientists tried for decades but couldn't find a link to any current group. The outside of it wasn't hard like arthropods, shaped like annelids worms, or simple like early chordates. It was and still is a piece of a biology experiment that didn't work out. These days, most scientists agree that Opabinia is a stem arthropod, which is a group that includes crabs, insects, and spiders. The flaps and trunk may be early forms of the segmented limbs that arthropods later refined. Opabinia also provides insight into how early predators might have adapted to a world full of soft prey. Before hard shells evolved widely, many animals fed on worms and gelatinous creatures. A specialized grabbing trunk was perfect for this environment. But once tougher shells became common, creatures like Opabinia lost their competitive edge. Its delicate body and feeding method simply couldn't keep up with the new armored swimmers and more active hunters that evolved later. Despite not having claws, armor, or size, Opabinia was an effective predator for its time. Its combination of eyes, trunk, and flexible swimming made it a highly successful hunter in the early Cambrian seafloor ecosystem. But like many Cambrian species, its design didn't lead anywhere. After a few million years, the lineage fizzled out, leaving behind fossils so bizarre that every rediscovery feels surreal. Anomalocaris, the shrimp that ate everything. Anomalocaris, the Cambrian predator that was so strange that scientists mistakenly called it 3 different animals, has caused as much scientific doubt and excitement as any other dead animal. Its mouth, body, and head limbs were all thought to be different species for many years. Some parts looked like shrimp, some looked like jellyfish, and some looked like something else. Later, paleontologists found out that they all belonged to the same animal, the first real big hunter on Earth. It's such a strange animal that it still doesn't look real when it's properly restored. Anomalocaris lived about 520 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion, a time when animal life on Earth was rapidly diversifying. But unlike most Cambrian organisms that were tiny, simple, and soft-bodied, Anomalocaris was big, up to 1 meter long, making it a giant for its era. It swam through the oceans with undulating side lobes that worked like the wings of a manta ray, allowing it to move smoothly and quickly across the sea floor. This elegant swimming motion gave it a hunting advantage unmatched by anything else alive at the time. Its most famous parts were the 2 frontal appendages, which were joined arms that curled forward and downward like big shrimp tails. Each arm had sharp spines that it used to grab its prey. Early reconstructions thought these arms were the bodies of creatures that looked like shrimp, which is how Anomalocaris got its name, abnormal shrimp. In fact, these parts were strong, grasping tools that could hold prey in place, lift it off the bottom of the water, or pull it toward the mouth. The mouth itself was one of the most misunderstood fossil discoveries in paleontology. At first, it was described as a jellyfish because it resembled a ring with radiating plates. Only later did researchers realize it was a radial mouth, shaped like a pineapple slice, with hard, overlapping plates arranged in a circle. The mouth didn't crush shells the way earlier reconstructions showed. Instead, studies suggest it worked more like a flexible gripping device, ideal for soft prey. Its mouth could open wide, clamp down, and create suction that pulled food inward, a trait shared with modern cephalopods. Vision is another area where Anomalocaris seems unreal. Fossils from Australia revealed that it had compound eyes with up to 16,000 lenses each, comparable to or even exceeding some modern dragonflies. For the Cambrian era, this was cutting-edge biological technology. While most animals relied on simple light-detecting cells, Anomalocaris could see clearly, track movement, and differentiate objects. Its superior eyesight, combined with its swimming skills, made it an elite hunter in a world where most organisms were slow and poorly defended. Anomalocaris belonged to the radiodonts, a group of early arthropod relatives that experimented with different body plans long before insects, crustaceans, and spiders evolved. Radiodonts came in many sizes and shapes. Some were filter feeders, some were scavengers, and some, like Anomalocaris, were active predators. Although they look alien today, radiodonts were key players in early marine ecosystems and helped shape the evolutionary arms race that led to tougher shells, faster movement, and more complex sensory systems in later animals. Tully Monstrum, the Tully Monster of Illinois. Scientists are still not sure what the Tully Monster was because every new study seems to change what they think it might have been. With its long, tube-shaped body, paddle-shaped tail fin, eyes perched on a stiff horizontal bar, and long, flexible head finishing in a claw-like jaw, this creature is only found in the Mason Creek deposits of Illinois. It looks like evolution tried to make an animal without reading the directions first. Someone who just woke up from a dream would probably be able to draw a sea monster that looks a lot like Tully Monstrum. That's one reason why it looks fake even now. No animal today even comes close. The Tully Monster lived about 300 million years ago during the Carboniferous period, a time when much of North America was covered in lush swamps. While giant insects and early amphibians ruled the land, the shallow coastal waters hosted stranger creatures, and Tully Monstrum was one of the strangest. Its body was soft and lacked any bones or hard armor, which is why its fossils are so rare. Only the unique chemical preservation of Mason Creek saved its form in exquisite detail. Without that site, we might never have known it existed at all. The first thing most people notice is the proboscis, a long appendage extending from the front of the body, ending in a pair of tiny jaws. These jaws had small tooth-like structures that looked adapted for grabbing worms or small fish. This feeding tool wasn't like anything else in the fossil record. It bent, curled, and reached, almost like an elephant trunk crossed with a pincer. Scientists still debate how strong it was, or how much control Tully Monstrum had over it, but it clearly gave the animal a unique way of interacting with its environment. Then there are the eyes, two round structures sitting on the ends of a stiff bar that stretched across the top of the head. This eye bar is one of Tully Monstrum's most iconic features. Most animals place their eyes on the sides of their head, on stalks or at the front, but the Tully Monster placed them out wide, almost like headlights. These eyes weren't basic either. Studies of their preserved tissue show pigment-filled structures similar to those in vertebrate eyes. This led some scientists to argue that Tully Monstrum might be related to lampreys, jawless fish with simple vertebrae. For a brief period, it was even claimed that the Tully Monster might be an early vertebrate, but not everyone agreed. Another group of experts said that the assumed vertebrate traits were wrongly interpreted and that the animal might actually be linked to soft-bodied invertebrates. A few people said it might be related to mollusks. Some people said it didn't fit with any known group. In 2023, a new study moved back toward the idea that Tully Monster wasn't really a vertebrate, which started a new argument. This back and forth is one reason why the Tully Monster seems unreal. It doesn't fit nicely into evolution's family tree. The strange shape of Tully Monster's body, eyes that look like arthropods, and a proboscis that looks like it came from a sci-fi movie are some of the things that make it look so fake. But this mix and match pattern comes from a time in Earth's past when evolution was still trying out new shapes, a long time before modern groups decided on more common ones. Many families that lived in the Carboniferous seas didn't have any offspring, so their bodies look strange to us because they didn't make it long enough to become normal. Atopodentatus, the zipper-mouthed reptile. Atopodentatus is one of those fossils that looks like it was put back together by chance, either upside down, sideways, or in the dark. Its head looked so strange when it was first found in China that scientists thought the front of its face stuck straight down like a yard rake. Drawings from the beginning showed that it scraped algae off of rocks by pulling its rake mouth along the bottom, like a reptile pushing a shovel into mud. The way it looked was really strange and off. It was true. Later finds showed that the first model of the bones was wrong, and the real head was even stranger. Atopodentatus's mouth was shaped like a sideways zipper. This zipper shape came from a set of interlocking teeth that formed a continuous comb along the upper and lower jaws. Instead of pointing forward like in most reptiles, these teeth curved outward, creating a wide horizontal slit. When Atopodentatus opened its mouth, the jaws spread out like a pair of sliding doors. When it closed them, the teeth meshed perfectly, forming a filter-like structure. No other reptile, living or extinct, has a mouth even remotely like this. It's the kind of design you'd expect from an alien engineer, not a Triassic reptile. Atopodentatus lived around 245 million years ago, shortly after the worst mass extinction in Earth's history, the End Permian event. This was a time when ecosystems were rebuilding themselves from near total collapse. New niches were open, new food sources were available, and evolution was scrambling to fill every possible gap. Atopodentatus seems to have been part of that scramble. Its bizarre mouth wasn't for biting, chewing, or slashing. Instead, it was used for scraping algae and filtering plant matter, an unusual diet for a marine reptile. Fossil evidence shows that the edges of its teeth were perfect for scooping and straining, almost like a baleen whale crossed with a vacuum cleaner. Its body was more familiar, shaped like a long, flattened swimmer with strong limbs modified for paddling. It wasn't built for speed or deep diving. Instead, it likely cruised over shallow seafloor habitats, pressing its mouth against rocks or sediment to feed. Think of a reptile version of a cow, if cows had zipper mouths and lived underwater. This feeding strategy could only evolve in a world where plant life flourished along coastlines, and that's exactly what the early Triassic provided. Algal mats spread across newly warmed oceans, creating perfect feeding grounds for a creature with a mouth made for scraping. The fact that Atopodentatus has so many different traits makes it look so fake. Most pictures of marine lizards show them with sharp teeth and bodies that are sleek so they can catch fish. That rule is broken by Atopodentatus. It was an expert in the sea that didn't hunt at all. It filtered plants like a huge tadpole made of reptiles. The head shape is also strange because the bones are thin, overlapped, and complicated. In contrast to other lizard skulls, Connecticut scans show a twisted set of plates that make up the frame of the zipper mouth. This is not the mouth you would start with if you were making an animal that works from scratch. The corrected reconstruction published in 2014 caused a shock in paleontology circles because it meant that early filter feeding in marine reptiles evolved independently, long before whales used a similar strategy. Atopodentatus was essentially a failed experiment in reptile herbivory, highly specialized but short-lived. Once competition increased and marine ecosystems stabilized, more generalist feeders and true herbivorous reptiles outcompeted it. Its unique mouth may have been brilliant for its time, but poorly suited for long-term evolutionary success. Stethacanthus, the shark with an anvil on its head. Stethacanthus is a small shark with a flat, anvil-shaped structure sticking out of its back that looks like a built-in desk. It is one of those ancient creatures that looks like it came from a drawing pad instead of the fossil record. What was even stranger was that the anvil had tiny spines that pointed backwards and made the surface rough, like sandpaper. It's something that no shark has today. In fact, this strange trait has never been seen in any other fish, live or dead. It's one of the best examples of how evolution can make a structure that doesn't make sense because it doesn't follow reasoning or hydrodynamics. Stethacanthus lived during the late Devonian and early Carboniferous periods, more than 300 million years ago. This was a time when shark evolution was exploding with variety. Instead of just the sleek torpedoes we know today, early sharks tried out all sorts of strange body plans. Some had long, saw-like snouts, others had weird fin placements or heavy armor plates, but Stethacanthus took the crown for creativity with its dorsal pad, often called the ironing board, anvil, or platform by paleontologists. The structure wasn't small. In many species, it spanned much of the shark's back and rose high above its body. At first, scientists thought it might be used to scrape algae, anchor to the sea floor, or even act as a weapon. But none of those ideas fit the anatomy. The pad was too fragile to use for ramming. It didn't have muscles that would let the shark press it down on anything, and it wasn't shaped to anchor the shark in currents or cling to rocks. Instead, the surface was covered with modified denticles, tiny structures similar to shark scales but shaped into spines. Under magnification, they look like a field of backward-leaning hooks. What's the point of a shark having an ironing board with spikes on its back? The most popular idea now is that it was for show and conversation, most likely related to breeding. The anvil structure was only found on males, and it was placed so that other sharks coming from behind or above could see it clearly. In fact, some paleontologists think Stethacanthus used the pad to show that it was in charge or ready to mate. The spines may have reflected light underwater, making a sparkling area that other sharks could see. Stethacanthus was the first shark to evolve an ornament instead of a weapon, which has not been done by any other shark since. Another idea suggests that the spiny pad acted as a defensive bluff. When threatened, the shark could arch its back, presenting the sharp surface toward a predator's mouth. A bite to that area would be unpleasant at best. Some researchers think Stethacanthus may have crouched its body and lifted the anvil at attackers, making it appear larger and more dangerous than it really was. The exact behavior is unknown, but the dual purpose of defense and display fits the fossil evidence better than earlier theories. The rest of Stethacanthus's body was surprisingly normal. It had a streamlined shape, well-developed fins, and a mouthful of teeth suited for catching small fish and invertebrates. It wasn't a top predator. It lived in reefs and shallow seas where competition was fierce. While giant armored fish and other early sharks fought for resources, Stethacanthus seems to have relied on agility and clever adaptations rather than brute strength. The anvil may have helped males find mates in busy ecosystems full of similar species. The tail fin of Stethacanthus is one of the bizarre things about it. Its tail wasn't formed like the perfect crescent that fast-swimming sharks have today. Instead, it had an odd shape, with a top lobe that looked out of place. This, along with the dorsal pad's drag, makes it look like Stethacanthus wasn't made for long chases. It most likely only went short lengths at a time, using short bursts of speed to get around reefs and places with lots of prey. Drepanaspis, the pancake fish with no jaws. Someone must have dropped a normal fish on the ground, stepped on it, and then thought that was good enough for evolution. That's how Drepanaspis looked. This Devonian fish is flat, shield-shaped, jawless, and oddly symmetrical. It lived more than 400 million years ago, but it still looks like a mistake that made it through long enough to fossilize. Its body was so flattened that it looked like a living pancake floating just above the water. To make things even stranger, it moved backwards compared to modern animals that live on the bottom of the ocean. There's nothing about it that looks like a fish should look like. Drepanaspis belonged to a group called the heterostracans, early jawless fishes that relied on heavy armor plates rather than speed or bite force. These plates covered the head and front of the body, forming a rigid shield that protected the animal from predators. In Drepanaspis, the armor formed a broad, almost disc-like structure. Instead of a narrow head and streamlined form, it looked more like a flattened surfboard with a tail sticking out. Its mouth was positioned on top of the body, rather than underneath, which is the opposite of what you see in modern bottom-feeding fish, like rays or flatfish. This odd orientation is one of the reasons paleontologists think Drepanaspis spent much of its life gliding close to the seafloor while facing upward. Because Drepanaspis had no jaws, it couldn't bite or chew. Instead, it fed by sucking in tiny particles from the water. The surface of its mouth and gill region had grooves and channels that helped filter out food from sediment. The animal likely swam slowly, lifting itself just above the seabed, letting water flow over its filtration structures. In a world filled with armored fish, giant predators, and early sharks, this quiet feeding strategy gave Drepanaspis a safe niche where competition was low and danger was manageable. Its armor wasn't smooth. On close inspection, the plates were covered in tiny arrow-shaped ridges that likely helped control water flow over the body. Some scientists think these ridges reduce drag, allowing Drepanaspis to glide more efficiently. Others believe they may have been used for sensory purposes, helping the animal detect vibrations from nearby predators or prey. Either way, the armor wasn't just protection. It was a multi-purpose tool engineered for life at the bottom of ancient seas. One strange thing about Drepanaspis is that it didn't have any pectoral or pelvic fins that were joined together. Fish today depend on their paired fins to help them turn, stay stable, and lift. Without them, Drepanaspis had to stay balanced with the shape of its body and the way its tail moved. It swam with lift from its wide flat screen, which worked like a hydrofoil. It looks a lot like a small flyer with a tail engine when seen from above. Even though it wasn't fast, this design was stable, which meant the fish could stay close to the bottom without sinking. The tail of Drepanaspis was heterocercal, meaning the top lobe was larger than the bottom one. This is typical of many early fishes, and it produced upward thrust as the tail moved. Combined with the flattened body, this helped Drepanaspis maintain its unusual orientation. The effect was a fish that seemed to fly just above the seabed, floating upward with each flick of its tail while using its armor plate to hang steady in the water. In the fossil record, Drepanaspis is well preserved, and the pieces are so clear that scientists can study the tiny textures on its plates. That's how they found out the fish swam backwards compared to fish that live on the floor today. The way the mouth, eyes, gill holes, and muscle scars are shaped all point to this upside-down way of life. These days, rays have eyes on top and lips on the bottom. That pattern was completely turned around by Drepanaspis. This shows that early fish evolution created shapes that often look backward to us. Its squashed shape, upward-facing lips, lack of jaws, and complete lack of paired fins all add up to this. This is not a real ancestor of current vertebrates. It looks like something from a child's drawing of ocean animals. There was a real pancake fish that did well in its time, though. It's an experiment in evolution from a time when fish were just starting to play around with body shape, defense, and movement. Sharovipteryx, the gliding lizard that flew backwards. The Sharovipteryx is one of those strange ancient animals that makes you wonder if evolution messed up its plans. Most animals get the ability to move by growing wings on their arms. It's easy, works well, and makes sense. In fact, Sharovipteryx did the opposite. It got wings on its legs and a big fabric stretched between its long back legs. Its front legs stayed small and weren't very good at lifting it off the ground. It made a lizard that looked like a badly folded paper airplane with a body in the middle, long legs that were like wings, and small arm membranes that worked more like stabilizers. It's one of the weirdest tests of flight ever done on Earth. Sharovipteryx lived during the Middle Triassic, around 225 million years ago. This was long before birds, bats, or pterosaurs dominated the skies. Flight was still an unexplored frontier, and evolution tested many odd ideas to see what worked. Sharovipteryx belonged to an early group of reptiles called proterosaurs, long-necked, lightly built animals that experimented with unusual body shapes. Even within this strange family, Sharovipteryx stood out. Its hind limbs were extremely long and thin, with bones stretched far beyond normal proportions. These elongated legs supported a large membrane that formed a triangular wing when fully extended. Because its main wings were behind its center of mass, Sharovipteryx likely glided backwards oriented, with its legs acting as the main lifting surface, while the small forelimb membranes provided balance and steering. This is the reverse of modern gliding animals like flying squirrels or colugos. Even pterosaurs and birds, which evolved later, used their arms as the primary flight surface. But Sharovipteryx may have been capable of surprisingly stable glides, thanks to its unique configuration. Wind tunnel tests using model reconstructions show that the rear wing design could produce smooth, controlled gliding if the tail and forelimbs acted as stabilizers. The body of Sharovipteryx was narrow, almost tube-like, built for low drag. Its tail was long and supported by stiffening rods that helped keep it straight during flight. The tail likely acted like the rudder of an airplane, allowing the animal to adjust its orientation mid-glide. Fossils show that the hind limb membranes attached not just to the legs, but also partially to the tail, forming a delta wing shape similar to modern fighter jets. This wing shape creates lift even at low speeds and is known for providing good stability, suggesting that Sharovipteryx was more than a failed experiment. It may have been a skilled glider in its environment. Its lifestyle remains debated, but most paleontologists agree that Sharovipteryx probably lived in forests or rocky cliff zones where controlled gliding offered survival benefits. It may have launched itself from tree trunks or high branches, spreading its leg wings to glide toward lower perches or the ground. Its sharp claws and long limbs could have helped it cling to bark or climb surfaces. Because it was small, about the size of a pigeon, it didn't need a massive gliding membrane to cover long distances. Its unusual design may have been ideal for short-range leaps or escaping predators. The way Sharovipteryx's flight parts are placed is one reason why it looks so artificial. These days, we think wings should be on the arms, so legs that look like wings don't make sense. But this plan, with wings facing the wrong way, wasn't unheard of in the Triassic. A close cousin, Longisquama, got long scales that looked like feathers and grew them along its back. This is another strange adaptation for flying. During the Triassic, scientists tried a lot of strange mechanical tests. Sharovipteryx is one of the most daring of these. The fossil of Sharovipteryx is also unusually delicate, with impressions of soft tissue preserved around the hind limbs. These impressions confirm that the membranes were large and structured, not just loose skin. The detail preserved in the fossil leaves little doubt about its unusual anatomy. Scientists can see the edges of the wing membranes, the shape of the tail support, and the proportions of the limbs with clarity. This level of preservation makes it impossible to dismiss Sharovipteryx as a misinterpretation. It really did glide using its legs. Sharovipteryx is captivating because it shows ideas that would come back to life millions of years later in early pterosaurs. Some early pterosaurs could fly because their back legs and tail membranes were strong. Sharovipteryx is not a direct ancestor of flying lizards, but the way it was built shows that evolution tried many ways to get to the air before deciding on the arm wing system, which is more effective. Longisquama, the reptile with feathered scales. Longisquama is a dinosaur that looks like it would have fit right in at home in a fairy tale book, not the Triassic period. The lizard was about the size of a pigeon, but the long, feather-like structures that came out of its back made it stand out. These things were neither feathers nor spines in the way birds do. Long, flat, spine-shaped scales that stood straight up like pretty sails. Each one looked like a quill crossed with a palm leaf. When experts first looked at the fossil, they thought it was fake, because it looked so fake and staged. But as more study proved they were real, Longisquama became one of the strangest fashion statements in evolution. Longisquama lived around 235 million years ago in what is now Kyrgyzstan, during a time when reptiles were experimenting wildly with body shapes. Unlike the large predators and armored reptiles that would dominate later, Longisquama inhabited tropical forests full of ferns, conifers, and early insects. Its body was lightly built, with long limbs suited for climbing. It likely spent most of its time in trees, using its claws to cling to branches as it searched for food. Its skull and teeth suggest it ate insects or plant material, not other animals. In many ways, Longisquama would have been unremarkable, if not for the structures rising from its back. These strange appendages, called integumentary appendages, are the fossil's most distinctive feature. Each appendage was long and flat, with a central shaft and leaf-like lobes extending outward. The oldest interpretations thought they were attached in pairs, like wings, leading some scientists in the 1970s to suggest Longisquama might be connected to the origin of birds. That idea quickly sparked controversy. Critics argued that the appendages weren't feathers at all, but specialized scales. Later, imaging confirmed that they lacked the branching structure of true feathers, and instead resembled highly modified reptile scales. However, show is still the main reason. A lot of modern snakes communicate with frills, crests, or swollen sacs that are brightly colored, especially when it's time to mate. The limbs of Longisquama may have evolved for the same reasons. In a forest, a row of tall scales that looked like leaves would have been easy to see. They might have been pretty or had patterns on them. If males had bigger parts, they might have used them to find mates or scare off competitors. Longisquama may have been one of the first animals whose sexual selection pushed their bodies to strange, artistic ends. The fossil of Longisquama is also unusual in that it preserves these delicate structures at all. Soft tissues rarely fossilize, but the site where it was found, known for exceptional preservation, captured the outline of the scales in fine detail. That clarity has fueled decades of debate. Some paleontologists argued the scales belonged to plants or debris stuck to the fossil, but careful microscopic studies showed clear attachment points on the spine and consistent growth patterns across multiple appendages. They were biological and belonged to the animal. The fact that Longisquama crosses feathers, scales, and artistic crests together makes it look fake currently. Its parts don't look like spines, skin flaps, or simple scales because they are too flat, too organized, or too leaf-like. They are a warning that evolution often creates structures that are in a state of change or experimentation and don't easily fit into the categories we use today. Some old ideas say that Longisquama wasn't on its way to becoming a bird, but it does show that lizards were already changing their bodies to look better and be more efficient long before birds or pterosaurs flew. Nothosaurus, the smiling reptile with a double life. Nothosaurus is one of those ancient animals that looks too stylized and well designed. It almost looks like a CGI model instead of a real Triassic lizard. With its long, toothy grin, smooth body, and arms that are halfway between legs and paddles, it looks like an animal that doesn't know who it is or what it wants to be. It was, in a way. Nothosaurus really did have two lives. It spent some time on land and some time at sea. It hunted in shallow coastal waters while still being able to get on beaches and rocky shores. Its skull looks a bit friendly, and the fact that it lives in both water and land makes it one of the weirdest early marine snakes ever found. Nothosaurus lived around 240 million years ago during the Middle Triassic, long before the rise of dinosaurs and millions of years before true marine reptiles like plesiosaurs took over the oceans. It belonged to a group called Sauropterygians, which would later give rise to long-necked plesiosaurs. But while its descendants committed fully to the sea, Nothosaurus remained a transitional form, experimenting with the idea of marine life while still keeping ties to land. Its body tells that story clearly. A streamlined torso for swimming, but limbs that still retained joints and claws for walking on shore. The most striking feature of Nothosaurus is its head. Long and narrow, it ended in a V-shaped snout lined with sharp recurved teeth that interlocked when the mouth closed. This gave it a permanent grin that looks almost cheerful until you realize those teeth were perfect for grabbing slippery prey. The teeth angled inward, preventing fish or squid from wriggling free once caught. This tooth structure appears in many aquatic predators today, but Nothosaurus was one of the earliest reptiles to evolve it. Its jaws were lightweight, but built for a rapid snapping motion, ideal for quick strikes in shallow water. Its eyes sat high on the head, suggesting it hunted from just below the surface, peering upward or forward as it stalked prey. Some fossils show attachments for strong jaw muscles, meaning Nothosaurus could close its jaws quickly even if the bite force wasn't extremely strong. This matches a lifestyle of quick grabs rather than bone-crushing bites. It ambushed fish in bursts of speed rather than wrestling them. Nothosaurus had an unusual way of swimming. Later, marine reptiles developed stiff flippers that acted like underwater wings. Nothosaurus still had defined limbs with joints, meaning its paddling motion combined both limb strokes and body undulation. It likely swam with lateral movements like a crocodile, using its tail and torso to generate thrust while the limbs steered. This mixed swimming strategy reflects how early in reptile evolution this experiment occurred. Nature hadn't settled on a perfect blueprint yet. Its ability to move on land also shaped its behavior. Nothosaurus probably basked on rocks or beaches much like modern seals. Fossil trackways from Triassic shorelines show footprints resembling those of semi-aquatic reptiles, possibly related species. Being able to exit the water allowed Nothosaurus to escape predators, lay eggs, rest safely, and warm its body. But this double life came with trade-offs. In water, limb joints created drag. On land, its long body and semi-webbed feet made walking awkward. One of the most fascinating arguments about Nothosaurus is whether or not it hunts with other animals. Large bone beds keep a lot of people close together, which suggests that some people lived in groups. If this is true, these animals may have chased schools of fish together, or looked for food along the coast as a loose pack. Reptiles rarely hunt in groups these days, but it's not impossible. Crocodiles and monitor lizards do sometimes work together. If Nothosaurus did even simple organized hunting, it would be millions of years before lizards started hunting together as a social group. Tanystropheus, the reptile with a giraffe neck. This ancient animal, Tanystropheus, has a neck that looks like it was stretched in Photoshop and then stopped being stretched. Its neck was 3 times as long as its body, and it was made up of a bunch of vertebrae that were so long and thin that early paleontologists thought they belonged to a huge flying lizard. Scientists didn't know what to do with the fossils for decades because the bones didn't look like those of a regular lizard. They were too long, too thin, and too fragile. Researchers didn't figure out the truth about Tanystropheus until much later. It was a Triassic animal, with a neck like a giraffe and a body like a lizard. The strangest part? That neck wasn't able to bend. It was stiff. Tanystropheus lived around 240 million years ago, along the coastlines of what is now Europe and the Middle East. Its world was full of shallow seas, tangled shorelines, and reef-like environments where small fish and squid thrived. That's where Tanystropheus found its niche. Instead of chasing prey or diving deep, it used its long neck like a fishing pole. It kept its body hidden closer to the shore or the sea floor and extended its neck out into open water, snapping up prey with minimal movement. This stealth fishing strategy allowed it to feed while keeping much of its body concealed from both predators and prey. The neck vertebrae themselves are some of the strangest bones in the fossil record. Each vertebra could be more than 20 centimeters long and had tall neural spines and internal struts reinforcing the structure like a truss bridge. These reinforcements prevented the neck from folding or bending too much. Contrary to what people imagine, Tanystropheus couldn't twist its neck like a snake or crane. Instead, the neck acted more like a semi-rigid rod, stable, strong, and suited for careful, controlled motions. This rigidity also meant the animal had to position its body precisely to strike prey, using its whole torso rather than bending its neck dramatically. The skull of Tanystropheus was narrow, full of sharp teeth curved inward to hold onto slippery prey. Some species had needle-like teeth, perfect for catching small fish. Others had more robust teeth, suggesting they may have hunted crustaceans or squid-like animals. This variation hints at multiple species within the genus, each adapted to different feeding strategies. Recent fossils even show 2 distinct sizes, a small-bodied version and a giant species reaching 6 meters long. Both sizes shared the same absurd neck design, showing that evolution doubled down on this bizarre structure rather than abandoning it. For decades, scientists debated whether Tanystropheus lived mostly on land or in water. Its limbs were strong enough to support its weight on land, and its body design wasn't fully streamlined for swimming, but the neck length made walking awkward, and balancing such a long structure on land seems impractical. The breakthrough came with CT-scanned skulls, showing a nose and eye arrangement adapted for aquatic hunting, similar to modern crocodiles. The animal likely spent most of its time in the water or at the water's edge, lunging its long neck forward while keeping its body anchored. The fact that Tanystropheus is so out of balance makes it look false. Most animals with long necks, like sauropods, giraffes, and plesiosaurs, have big bodies to balance out their necks. Tanystropheus didn't do it. It had a small chest, average-sized legs, and a tail that wasn't very long. If you made the drawing bigger, its neck would fall over because it was too big. Still, this animal lived for millions of years. It wasn't awkwardly made. It was made for a certain way of life, where accuracy was more important than speed. Pambdelurion, the 8-limbed sea crawler. As with many Cambrian animals, Pambdelurion looks like evolution made all three at the same time, because it couldn't decide whether it wanted to make an animal that could swim, crawl, or do something in between. Picture an animal with 8 limbs that look like legs on the bottom, flying fins on the sides, a soft, tapered body, and a pineapple-shaped mouth full of teeth. It used different sets of arms to crawl and swim, switching between modes like a current robot might switch between wheels and thrusters. In the same way that many Cambrian animals do, it looks like a prototype rather than a finished form. Pambdelurion lived around 518 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion, a period when life was diversifying rapidly and animal bodies were still experimental. It belonged to the group known as radiodonts, relatives of the larger, more famous Anomalocaris. But while Anomalocaris was built for speed and predation, Pambdelurion occupied a different role, something between a crawler and a filter feeder. Fossils from Greenland preserve it with incredible detail, showing both soft tissues and the arrangement of limbs, a rarity for creatures this ancient. The body of Pambdelurion was elongated and flexible, with 2 different kinds of appendages. Along the underside were 8 lobopod-like legs, soft, stubby, and equipped with tiny claws. These legs let it crawl along the seafloor, digging into sediment or gripping surfaces. But along its sides were wide, fin-like flaps arranged in overlapping rows. These flaps ripple in reconstructions, like the fins of a cuttlefish. When Pambdelurion swam, these flaps created lift and thrust, letting the animal glide gently through the water. No other Cambrian creature combined crawling legs and swimming flaps so seamlessly. Its head was equally strange. Instead of jaws, Pambdelurion had a circular mouth made of curved tooth plates. These hooked inward, forming a ring of serrated structures that could grip or scrape food. The pineapple slice mouth appears in many radiodonts, but Pambdelurion's version was less developed than in its predatory cousins. Instead of ripping prey apart, it may have sucked up organic material or small organisms from the water. This fits with the structure of its head appendages, short, spined arms that were better suited for sifting and scooping than grabbing large prey. Another clue to its feeding style comes from its size. Pambdelurion was smaller than the apex radiodonts, likely less than a foot long. Its body lacked the heavy musculature of predators, and its flaps were adapted for slow, steady swimming rather than bursts of speed. Many scientists believe it lived a peaceful lifestyle, drifting above the seafloor and picking through soft sediment. Others suggest it used its arms and legs together to disturb the substrate, then vacuumed up whatever tiny organisms floated free. Its pineapple ring mouth would have been perfect for this gentle suction feeding. One of the most captivating aspects about Pambdelurion is that it gives us hints about how insects, crabs and spiders got their start. Its lobopod legs and flap-like moving structures put it in the same group as earlier worm-like animals, and later arthropods with hard exoskeletons and flexible arms. Even though Pambdelurion didn't have a hard shell, the way its body parts and legs were arranged shows that early evolution tried out the idea of paired limbs. At that time, nature was changing from soft-bodied worms to the hard-shelled arthropods that would eventually take over the world. The mix of traits on Pambdelurion makes him look unreal. Animals today tend to specialize. Fish have fins, worms have legs, and animals that eat food through a filter have certain parts of their mouths. All of these were in Pambdelurion at the same time. If you wanted to make an organism that works well, you probably wouldn't give it 8 legs that can crawl, swimming flaps, a sucking mouth, and feeding arms with spines. It looks like some parts are too built up and others are not enough. In the Cambrian era, though, this mix of styles worked. There were no direct competitors in those ecosystems, so strange forms could do well because there were no other animals that would eat them. Therizinosaurus, the giant with scythe claws. One dinosaur, Therizinosaurus, looks like it was drawn by 3 different artists who didn't talk to each other. It looked like a big ostrich with extra large feathers and claws longer than swords. Its belly was like a giant sloth's pot belly. It was up to 10 meters tall, which made it taller than most predators of its time. However, it was a peaceful plant eater that used fear more than violence. If you saw it in a movie, you might think the people who made it went too far. But this strange creature was real, and its fossils are still some of the strangest ever found. The claws are what grab attention first. Each one stretched close to a meter long, longer than a human arm, and curved like a giant scythe blade. These weren't delicate tools, but thick, powerfully anchored structures. They sat on forearms packed with strong tendons that could pull with enormous force. While many early theories suggested these claws were used for slicing prey, scientists now know Therizinosaurus wasn't hunting anything. Instead, the claws acted like a combination of gardening tools and defense weapons. The dinosaur could hook branches, pull down entire shrubs, or rake through dense foliage. And if a predator came too close, say a hungry Tarbosaurus, it could swing those claws wide like natural sabers, creating a defensive zone no carnivore wanted to cross. Its large belly is another feature that seems almost comical. Therizinosaurus had one of the widest rib cages of any theropod. This huge torso wasn't about strength or intimidation, it was all about digestion. The animal needed a large gut to break down fibrous plants, much like modern elephants and sloths. While many of its carnivorous cousins had narrow bodies built for sprinting, Therizinosaurus carried the shape of a gentle browser that spent its days stripping leaves and chewing vegetation. Yet despite its size and bulk, its legs were surprisingly long, and it may have been able to move with slow, steady strides that covered ground efficiently. The head, in contrast, was tiny compared to the rest of the body. It held a narrow, toothless beak suited for cropping leaves rather than biting flesh. Some fossils from related species show simple leaf-shaped teeth farther back in the jaw, suggesting Therizinosaurus may have mixed beak-based clipping with minor chewing. But nothing about its skull hints at predatory behavior. The eyes faced sideways rather than forward, indicating it relied more on watching for danger than hunting. This head-body mismatch is part of what makes the animal look so unreal. Giant dinosaurs usually have giant skulls, not heads small enough to look misplaced. The feathers on it make it more bizarre. Even though no direct feathers of Therizinosaurus have been found, feathers that look like downy hairs and covered most of the body have been found in close cousins. These feathers were not used for flying, but for keeping warm, keeping the temperature stable, and maybe even showing off. Some paleontologists think that males may have had brighter spots or different designs on their feathers to attract mates. Imagine a huge pot-bellied giant with big claws and fluffy wings. This creature looks like it was put together by accident, but every part of it made sense in its surroundings. Therizinosaurus lived in the Nemegt Formation of Mongolia, a place filled with large predators, dunes, riverbeds, and forests. It shared its world with Tarbosaurus, Velociraptor relatives, and long-necked sauropods. Being peaceful in a predator-rich ecosystem required strategy. Therizinosaurus didn't run fast, didn't hide well, and didn't attack like a hunter. Instead, it relied on size, intimidation, and the threat of those claws. One well-aimed swing could cripple or kill even the biggest carnivore. Many scientists compare its strategy to modern herbivores like moose or cassowaries, relatively calm until threatened, then alarmingly dangerous. Archaeotherium, the hell pig that wasn't a pig. Archaeotherium is one of those ancient animals that looks fake even when it is reconstructed in a museum. It looked like a predator that woke up on the wrong side of the Cenozoic. Its body was like a big pig, its legs like a deer, and its jaws like a crocodile. It wasn't even a pig, but it was called the hell pig. It was instead a member of a group of mammals called entelodonts, which are more related to hippos and whales than to anything that oinks today. Imagine a wild pig with a demon's head that had been remade by a horror artist. That's pretty much how Archaeotherium looked. It lived roughly 37 to 30 million years ago during the Oligocene, a time when North America's open plains were filled with early horses, primitive rhinos, giant birds, and nimble mammals trying to survive in newly forming grassland ecosystems. Archaeotherium stood right in the middle of that chaos. It could reach more than 6 feet tall at the shoulder, with huge jaws lined with crushing teeth and long canines used for fights, displays, and ripping apart food. Its bite was powerful, but the skull shape hints at something more complex. This animal wasn't a pure carnivore, nor a pure herbivore. It was an omnivorous opportunist. And that made it unpredictable. One of the strangest features of Archaeotherium is the set of bony flanges on the sides of its lower jaw. These ridge-like growths look like armor plates or oversized cheekbones. Scientists believe they anchored strong jaw muscles, letting Archaeotherium bite down with enormous force. But these flanges may have also played a role in dominance displays. The skull shape suggests adults may have slammed their heads together or shoved rivals during fights, much like modern musk oxen. This makes Archaeotherium not just a predator, but also a social fighter, using intimidation to maintain territory or hierarchy within its group. Its teeth show that it is more peculiar than before. Its canines were big, like those of a saber-toothed hunter, and its teeth were flat and ground down, like those of a plant-eating animal. This mix makes me think of a life where you take what you can get. Bite marks on the bones of large animals found in fossils show that it scavenged and maybe even killed. Coprolites connected to entelodonts have a wide range of materials in them, from pieces of bone to plant matter. Some paleontologists think Archaeotherium may have hunted like a hyena from the past, with some pig-like traits. The animal may have chased young or weak animals, taken kills from other animals, and eaten anything it could find that was edible. Despite its size and fearsome appearance, Archaeotherium was surprisingly fast. Its long legs and lightweight bones indicate it could run down prey across open ground. Early horses like Mesohippus would have struggled to outrun it. Some reconstructions show Archaeotherium sprinting at nearly the same speed as modern-day wolves. For an animal that looked bulky and awkward, this speed made it even more dangerous. Prey couldn't simply escape by fleeing. Archaeotherium also had a strong sense of smell, based on its enlarged nasal cavity. This would have helped it track carcasses or follow herds across long distances. In a landscape full of competition, a good nose meant more food and more opportunities. Its hearing may have been sharp as well, judging from the structure of its inner ear, giving it an early warning system in a world filled with predators, giant birds, and other entelodonts. It's also remarkable to see that tracks and well-preserved bone beds at fossil sites suggest that animals may have behaved in groups. In Archaeotherium, people may have moved in loose family groups instead of tight packs like wolves. They would have been even scarier if they lived in groups, especially when they were looking for food or scaring off other animals. Imagine a group of hell pigs running across the plains, each swinging a huge head like a weapon. It's easy to see why these animals were so dominant in their environments. Platybelodon, the shovel-tusk elephant. People often think that reconstructions of the ancient animal Platybelodon are just jokes because it looks so strange. It looked like someone hit its lower mouth with a shovel blade in a scoop-shaped way. Its body was like that of an early elephant. The tusks of Platybelodon were not curled like elephants today. Instead, they were made of bone and had sharp enamel around the edges. Its upper tusks were pointing down and met the shovel to make a cutting edge. This strange body part was real, and it was very helpful. It looked fake, like something made for a cartoon building site. Platybelodon lived during the Miocene, around 15 million years ago, when vast wetlands and river valleys stretched across Africa, Asia, and North America. Its environment was full of reeds, soft trees, and thick vegetation, and Platybelodon evolved to take advantage of these plant-rich landscapes. Its shovel-tusk design wasn't just for show, it was a powerful feeding tool. For decades, scientists thought it used the lower tusks like a scoop to shovel mud and aquatic plants into its mouth. This idea stuck because the jaw shape looks exactly like a spoon. But new dentalware studies completely changed the story. Microscopic scratches on Platybelodon's flat tusks showed that it didn't scoop soft plants, it chopped wood. Researchers now believe Platybelodon used its lower tusks like a pair of giant pruning shears. It would grip branches with its trunk, brace the branch against the shovel-like jaw, and then slice it by snapping the upper tusks down like blades. Think of it as a living tree trimmer. This chopping behavior explains the sharp edges and heavy wear patterns found on fossil jaws. It wasn't a gentle grazer. It was a destructive browser that left shredded saplings behind. Its trunk was a big part of this process. The trunk wasn't as long or flexible as an elephant's today, but it was still able to grab, pull, and move plants. Some studies say it may have had a split tip that could be used for a pincer-like grip. This helped Platybelodon move twigs around better before cutting them. Like the picture, its teeth fit the bill. The back teeth, called molars, were ridged and great for cutting through flexible wood. Platybelodon was made to break down tougher materials than modern elephants. which mostly chew on plants and leaves. The rest of its body was more recognizable. Platybelodon stood about 8 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed several tons. Its legs were sturdy, built for supporting its heavy head and jaw. Its posture was elephant-like, and it likely lived in herds similar to modern elephants. Fossil sites often contain the remains of multiple individuals, hinting at social behavior. Group living would have protected calves from predators like saber-toothed cats and crocodiles, which were common in its habitats. Despite the bizarre face, Platybelodon was well adapted to the changing environments of the Miocene. As forests expanded and river systems spread, there was plenty of vegetation to slice and chew. But its specialization eventually became a problem. When climates dried and grasslands spread, animals that could graze tougher grasses thrived. Platybelodon, with its wood-cutting jaw, was stuck with a feeding style that didn't match the new ecosystems. Its shovel jaw became a disadvantage, and its lineage faded as more flexible elephant species took over. Today's animals don't have anything like Platybelodon, which is one reason why it looks unreal. In this extreme way, no other animal uses its lower mouth as a tool. Even elephants' extinct cousins had strange horns, but nothing as big as this one. Modern eyes think the proportions are off. The shovel is too big, the upper tusks point down, and the mouth is shaped in a way that makes it impossible for it to work, where patterns and jaw movements, on the other hand, show that it was accurate and strong. Thylacosmilus, the saber-toothed marsupial. A creature from the past called Thylacosmilus looks so strange that many people think the skeletons were put back together wrong. The head was a very odd shape, and the bones that stuck out from its lower mouth, like sheaths for its fangs, were very big and sharp, like a Smilodon's. Even the way its canines grew was strange. They never stopped growing and pushed downward out of its head in a way that no other animal has ever done. It wasn't a cat at all, even though it looked like a saber-toothed cat. It was a mammal named Thylacosmilus. It lived around 6 to 3 million years ago in South America, which at the time was an isolated continent full of its own unique predators, prey, and evolutionary experiments. The ecosystem included terror birds, giant ground sloths, armored glyptodonts, and early hoofed mammals. Thylacosmilus had to compete in a world with predators that didn't behave like anything alive today. Its unusual skull wasn't a mistake. It was a response to this ecosystem, where speed, precision, and stealth mattered more than brute force. The saber teeth are what make it stand out. The sabers of Smilodon were long but couldn't grow much longer. The sabers of Thylacosmilus, on the other hand, were open-rooted, which means they kept growing like rat incisors. They could grow back if they broke or chipped, but this came with a price. The roots went up the brain so high that they grew over the top of the head, making a huge crest. Strong neck muscles were attached to this crest, which gave Thylacosmilus an amazing downward cutting force. It didn't bite like a big cat would. Instead, it pushed its head down like a fine tool. Then there are the jaw flanges. These weren't soft tissues, but solid bone walls rising from the lower jaw to protect the long, fragile sabers. When the mouth closed, the sabers slid neatly inside the flanges like knives going into scabbards. This protection kept the teeth from breaking during hunting or while tackling struggling prey. But the flanges also limited how wide the jaw could open. To compensate, the animal evolved a different biting style. Instead of a wide, crushing bite, Thylacosmilus used a narrower downward stabbing motion, powered mostly by its neck, not its jaws. Its body shape was another strange twist. Thylacosmilus didn't have the heavy, muscular build of a big cat. It had long, flexible limbs and a lighter body. Its chest was narrow, and its shoulders were built for pulling rather than delivering heavy blows. This suggests an ambush strategy, getting close, grabbing prey with its forelimbs, and delivering rapid, precise throat strikes with its sabers. Some scientists think it may have hunted smaller or slower animals than Smilodon did, relying on accuracy rather than overpowering strength. Its vision is another strange thing about it. CT pictures of the brain show that Thylacosmilus did not have eyes that faced forward like most predators do. It had eyes that were more on the sides of its head, which made it less able to see stereo depth. To make up for it, the brain turned the eye sockets so that there was still some overlap in the field of view. Paleontologists have been confused by this strange setting for years. Why would the eyes of a top hunter be turned to the side? One idea is that it followed its prey through thick greenery where it could see better out of the corners of its eyes. Another idea is that the saber's huge roots pushed the animal's eye holes outward, making it have a less than ideal shape. Thylacosmilus also has one of the strangest evolutionary stories. It represents a case of extreme convergent evolution. Two unrelated animals, marsupials and placental cats, both evolving saber teeth for similar hunting strategies. But Thylacosmilus took the idea further than any cat ever did. Its open-rooted fangs, jaw flanges, and skull crest were unique solutions that no other predator tried before or since. It wasn't copying the saber-tooth blueprint, it was writing its own version. The things about Thylacosmilus that don't match up with current things make it look fictitious. It has saber teeth that never stop growing, and bone sheaths that protect them, a skull that looks like a puzzle box, eyes that are put in strange ways, and a body that was made for stealth rather than strength. It looks like 3 different animals' parts were put together by an artist, but each part served a function. Dunkleosteus, the armored fish with a guillotine jaw. The skeleton of the Dunkleosteus is one of the few dead animals that still looks scary. Its head is made up of huge armor plates that fit together like a medieval helmet. Its jaws are 2 sharpened bone blades that move like a guillotine, and studies of muscle attachment suggest that its bite force may have been one of the greatest of any fish ever. Still, Dunkleosteus didn't have any teeth. Instead, it used mouth blades that got sharper on their own as the bone plates rubbed against each other over time. The edges got more pointy as it bit down. It was a live weapon system that evolved long before sharks took over the seas. This giant placoderm lived about 370 million years ago during the Devonian, often called the Age of Fishes. Oceans back then were full of armored swimmers, early sharks, bizarre lobe-finned fish, and soft-bodied prey that had never encountered a predator this powerful. Dunkleosteus reached up to 9 meters long, with a head so heavily armored it looked like a tank rolling through the water. But behind that tank-like exterior was a body that remains almost entirely unknown. Because its back half was made of cartilage instead of bone, it rarely fossilized. For years, artists guessed what Dunkleosteus looked like from the neck down. Sometimes streamlined like a tuna, other times thick and bulky like a shark. New studies suggest it may have had a broad, muscular midsection to support rapid lunges, making it a burst-hunting predator rather than a long-distance swimmer. Its jaws worked differently from anything alive today. Dunkleosteus used a 4-bar linkage system, similar to the mechanism inside some modern fish, to snap its jaws open with incredible speed. This allowed it to suck prey forward, then slam the jaws shut in a fraction of a second. The closing force is the part that made Dunkleosteus truly terrifying. Models show it could exert more than enough power to slice through bone, armor, and even other placoderms. Fossils of prey species often show bite marks carved cleanly through their protective plates, like someone cut them with a pair of metal shears. Dunkleosteus armor that is broken is one of the oddest pieces of proof. Some fossils have deep bite marks in their plates that look like the shape of the jaws of the species that made them. This makes me think that Dunkleosteus may have fought other dinosaurs of the same kind. It's still not clear if this was aggressive, mating-related, or part of cannibalism, but it paints a picture of a dangerous attacker that not even members of the same species were safe. Its feeding habits were equally dramatic. Dunkleosteus likely targeted anything slower, softer, or less armored than itself. Early sharks, ammonoids, bony fish, and even other armored species were on the menu. Its suction-powered strike meant the prey didn't have time to escape. The blade jaws then carved the meal into chunks that could be swallowed whole. Nothing in modern oceans quite compares. Sharks rip, crocodiles crush, but Dunkleosteus sliced with bone blades faster than most animals could react. Another detail that makes this creature feel unreal is its armor design. Unlike modern fish, Dunkleosteus didn't have scales on its head or neck. Instead, it wore layered plates that locked together but still allowed movement. These plates formed a natural shield, protecting the most vulnerable parts of its body while giving it the strength needed for its powerful jaw mechanism. The plates even show growth rings, similar to tree trunks, which help scientists estimate age and determine growth patterns. The lack of fossilized soft tissue has also led to confusion about how Dunkleosteus swam. Some reconstructions show it as a fast, powerful hunter like a great white shark. But others suggest it was more of an ambush predator, using short, explosive movements rather than sustained speed. Recent biomechanical studies lean toward the second idea. Dunkleosteus likely patrolled reefs or deeper waters, holding still until a target passed within striking distance. Then, it would explode forward with its armored head leading the charge. The mix of heavy armor, blade-like jaws, and a strange back half makes Dunkleosteus look unreliable. It looks like a mix of a tank, a shark, and a nightmare machine. The head alone makes it look like it was made rather than evolved. Every part of it, though, served a function. It was the result of millions of years of fighting in armored seas. Pegomastax, the fanged vegetarian. When you look at Pegomastax, it seems like it came straight from a cartoon movie and not the fossil record. It was about the size of a house cat, but it had a beaked mouth, sharp fangs, and bristly quills all over its body. It looked like a mix of a parrot, a vampire, and a porcupine on its face, but it wasn't made for hunting. A lot of the time, Pegomastax ate plants. It looks like the kind of animal that makes people think paleontologists are kidding, since nothing that cute, spiky, and strangely armed should be real. Pegomastax lived around 200 million years ago during the early Jurassic, in what is now South Africa. It was part of a group of early plant-eating dinosaurs called Heterodontosaurids, known for their weird dentition, hence the name different-toothed lizard. These dinosaurs often had beaks for clipping plants, cheek teeth for grinding, and in some cases, long canine-like fangs. Pegomastax took this combination to the extreme. Its front teeth formed a sharp beak, perfect for snipping vegetation, while the fangs extended downward like tiny daggers. At first glance, this makes Pegomastax look like a little predator, but wear patterns on its teeth show it wasn't biting into meat. The fangs likely had other uses entirely. One theory is that the fangs were used in social behavior, threat displays, dominance fights, or mating rituals. Many modern herbivores have similar traits. Male deer have antlers, musk deer have long saber-like teeth, and even some primates have projecting canines used mainly for intimidation. Pegomastax's fangs may have helped it compete with rivals without needing to actually attack. Another idea suggests the fangs helped it defend itself against predators. Being small, Pegomastax needed every advantage it could get, and a sharp bite could have discouraged attackers. But the teeth weren't built to tear flesh. They were more like tools for gripping or warning than for ripping. Its quills add an even stranger twist. Though Pegomastax fossils don't preserve quills directly, closely related species show impressions of stiff, hair-like structures along the back and sides. These quills weren't feathers but simple filaments, possibly for display or defense. If Pegomastax had the same feature, which is likely, it would have looked like a mix between a hedgehog and a dinosaur. The quills could puff up when it was threatened, making the animal look larger or more difficult to swallow. Combined with its sharp fangs, Pegomastax may have been surprisingly well protected for such a small herbivore. Its body shape was adapted for quick movement. Pegomastax had long hind legs and a lightweight frame, allowing it to sprint away from danger. Its front limbs were short but nimble, possibly used for grasping branches or pulling plants into reach. Its beak was sharp and efficient, letting it clip leaves, stems, and possibly fruits. The cheek teeth farther back in the jaw were ridged, perfect for grinding tough vegetation. Though tiny, Pegomastax was well equipped to survive in competitive early Jurassic landscapes filled with predators like early theropods and larger herbivores. How Pegomastax was found is another intriguing detail. The fossil was described in the 1960s, but it was kept in a collection for many years without being studied. Only in the last few years did paleontologists fully grasp how strange and important the fossil really was. When the head was finally looked at in great detail, experts were amazed by how strangely its features fit together. The mouth with the fangs caused the most discussion. At first, some people thought that Pegomastax might eat both plants and animals, using its teeth to grab insects or other small prey. But a close look at how the jaw works and how the teeth wear strongly supports a plant-based diet. Its jaws were not made to handle the stress of killing animals. Field evidence also supports this interpretation. Heterodontosaurids are found in environments rich in plant life, suggesting they thrived on vegetation. Pegomastax likely lived in small groups, browsing low-growing plants and keeping watch for predators. It may have used vocalizations or visual displays to communicate, similar to small mammals or birds today. The mix of quills, bright colors, which are speculative but plausible, and fanged beak would have made it a highly expressive and visually striking animal. Pegomastax today looks bogus because it has so many contradictions. It's small but has fangs. It's cute but has spikes. It looks peaceful but has tools for warning. And it eats plants even though its teeth look like they would be used for hunting. It looks like a figure from a fairy book because of these differences. But everything in the early Jurassic world served a purpose. Pegomastax didn't have to be big or scary. Its defenses only had to be quick, flexible, and smart. Here are some too weird to be real creatures that really do exist. They show that evolution has never been careful. These extinct animals weren't mistakes or stories. They were great survivors that came from natural processes that tried something once and never did it again. Check out these strange organisms. If you want to learn more about the craziest times on Earth in the past, please like, follow, and turn on alerts. Another movie is ready for you when you're ready to go on another trip into the impossible but true.